So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on when you're listening to this. This should be Tuesday for you. Hope you had a good Monday off, good Easter Monday off. Hope you did something you enjoyed. Today we're going to be talking about the prophets. But before we can do that, let's do last week's questions. I need to know, what are the 3 days of sacred Triduum called? Okay, so I'm going to start off with two minor prophets today. First off, you need to know that our prophets first appear in 1 Kings 17. That kind of introduces the story of the prophets. Now, I don't agree with this saying, but because actually Samuel was the last judge and the first prophet. We have guys like Nathan, who were a prophet. But according to our book, 1 Kings 17 is where prophets first appear. Now, when we talk about prophets, a lot of times people talk about them as some kind of predictor of the future, okay? And that's not what a prophet's job is. A job of a prophet is to get people to come back to God, okay? And biblical prophets always announce a message from God. Sometimes a prophet performs a miracle, which is what we'll be talking about tomorrow. But if a prophet is from God, then the miracle he's performing verifies his words. So, as you can see from our little chart, which is really hard to read, there are divisions of prophets. There are major and minor prophets. As I said earlier, we'll be talking about two minor prophets, and there are southern and northern prophets. So, southern prophets are the kingdom of Judah, okay, and northern prophets are the kingdom of Israel. So the first prophet we want to talk about is Amos, okay? So Amos is not a professional prophet. He doesn't make his living by being a prophet. In fact, he's a shepherd. Some people say that he tended to cattle or livestock, and he also tended fig trees. So what Amos's job is in tending to the fig tree is that he goes and he punctures a little hole in each fig, and this in fact makes the fig sweeter, and in making the fig sweeter it makes a really good wine. So the prophets have no visible mean of support. Prophets are called nabis, okay, and the nabi receives the divine words and should be listened to. So these prophets, these guys who aren't professional prophets, who come out and say, you're not following God's law, should be listened to, but they're very rarely listened to, okay? Most of the time, when we talk about prophets, they don't come from the region they're from. They don't come from where they're from. Remember, Jesus says a prophet receives no respect from his home region, his hometown. So our friend Amos is actually from the southern kingdom, which is Judah, but he prophesies is in Israel, which is the northern kingdom. And Amos's message goes with today. He talks about the rich becoming extremely rich and the poor becoming extremely poor. And one thing about prophets, especially Amos, is he uses stark contrast or stark imagery to get his point across. So he calls the women of Israel the cows of Bashan. Now, Bashan was a region off to the east of Israel, and it was known for its beautiful, beautiful cattle, big, fat cattle. And in calling the women of Israel the cows of Bashan, he's talking about how they're letting their riches get ahead of them. The other prophet I wanted to talk about was Hosea. Now he's the exception. He's called from his native Israel. Okay, and Samaria is in that northern kingdom. Okay, in Israel. He marries Gomer, who is unfaithful. The weird thing about it is he marries her even though he knows she's going to be unfaithful. And he's trying to make that point, that big point, that just like he loves Gomer, he knows that God loves us even though we're going to be unfaithful. And then, of course, the famous verse in Hosea is chapter 14, verse 1, where God tells the people to come back to him. You know, it's a song we sometimes sing in church. And Hosea is the precursor to the major prophet Jeremiah, in that one day he sees us as a community with one purpose. And that's kind of what we are. We are a community with one purpose in worshiping God. So I wish you a good day. Have a great Tuesday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Oh, and I also want to acknowledge my two sources, the Jerome Biblical Commentary and Klaus Koch's The Prophets, Book 2.